The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, greetings. Welcome to another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. This is program number 844, coming to you on Monday the 7th of November 2016. On this program, I will speak to you on the topic yet again of the age of consent. But before getting into the topic, quite a few preliminary comments I wish to make, beginning with obituaries. In that, I would like to send out my deepest condolences to all families which have suffered recent bereavements, particularly where the person who died has died suddenly. And there are two families I have especially in mind on this occasion. The family of Canon Huggins of Golden Vale, who will be laid to rest, I believe, on Wednesday, and the family of Brother Elton Anderson, whose death I did not hear about until on Saturday, the very day of the funeral. And I was really saddened to hear that he had passed. And a few other persons whose names I recognize, but as I said, I don't want to make this a program where I recite the names of several deceased persons. I usually single out one or two persons who have been specially close to me or who have been specially prominent in the society in their respective fields of endeavor. So my sympathies to all who are mourning and who have been in mourning recently. And the good book tells us in the Gospel of Matthew, "Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted." I would like to express get well wishes once again to all those who are shut in, whether in an institution like a hospital or otherwise, or at home. And I remember particularly our patriarch, His Excellency Edmund John at Belmont, and our deaconesses, Althea Peters, Sister Nan. We continue to lift them and all persons with illnesses in our prayers. Now, this week, the Association of Persons with Disabilities will be having their anniversary week, especially commemorating, and the president of that body, Elder Patricia Cumberbatch, Reverend Patricia Cumberbatch, most people call her Sister Pat. She has been the head of this institution, and they have been doing wonderful work on behalf of their membership. And I would like to urge the public to cooperate with them and support their ventures. I know every year the Prime Minister makes his residence available for a dinner on behalf of the Society of Persons with Disabilities. And Sister Pat is very close to my wife, Bishop Juliet Campbell. They worship in the same church, Upper Room Ministries. So all the very best to you and your membership, Sister Pat. And of course, Brother Stanley is famous throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He calls in on the radio every now and then and has interesting comments to make. And Brother Tally, all the best to you. Excuse me. Now, last Friday evening, I had the absolute delight to have attended a very special function. Sister Campbell and I were happy to accept an invitation from Bishop and Sister Hollis Charles. Well, Bishop Hollis Charles and Justina Charles, his wife of 50 years. The function was held at the Alexandrina Hotel. And that place, some of you would know, is at Prospect. Hotel Alexandrina is a remarkable spot, designed by the owners, local people, and it is heavenly when you get there. Unfortunately, the road leading to Hotel Alexandrina is not in the best condition. And I would urge the authorities to do what you can to fix up the road. But that 50th anniversary celebration, it was well planned, well organized. The Master of Ceremonies was none other than the incomparable Dr. George Frederick. Now, anything that is chaired by Dr. George Frederick is going to be enjoyable. He has such a delightful sense of humor, and he makes the audience feel relaxed, feel at home. And all in all, it was a marvelous event. Speeches were short, but very enjoyable. We had the beautiful singing voice of Dr. Westwick Williams. And those who remember Westwick, he doesn't sing a lot these days in public, but he is simply a masterful vocalist. We had renditions. Throughout the night, there was the expert music on the steel pan by Brother Rodney Small, and Rodney is a national treasure. Young man, simply brilliant on the tenor pan. All in all, a delight. So Bishop Charles and Sister Charles, thank you very much for the invitation. I can't recall enjoying a function as much as I did that one in a long, long time. I hope I am around when you celebrate your 60th wedding anniversary, and I hope if I'm around you will invite me once again, and me and Mrs. Campbell, to share the delights. Congratulations to your children and close friends who assisted with the organizing, and to the staff of Hotel Alexandrina. I say you did a fantastic job. That is a place where all Vincentians should get to know about that hotel. And where you have functions, call them and ask if you can have the function hosted there. Not very expensive from what I understand, but really, really beautiful. Thank you, Bishop Charles and Sister Charles. Now, let me remind you that next week, on the 20th of November, will be 20th of the Universal Children's Day. And the theme this year is Stop the Violence Against Children. And the ministry concerned will be having appropriate commemoration. Excuse me once again. Just want to touch on two other topics before I get into the age of consent. And the main topic will not be very long because I spoke about it as recently as in June this year. But I had to go back because in spite of my having cleared up the position with the law, there are still people getting on the radio with misinformation. So I hope when I've dealt with the topic tonight, that would be the end of people saying all sorts of nonsense, calling in on the radio programs and speaking about things they know nothing about. So, two other items in preliminary remarks. Firstly, Liat. Now, Liat has been in the news recently by virtue of certain public statements made. First of all, there were the statements coming after the Board of Directors meeting held in Barbados. Dr. Gonsalves, chairman of the Board of Directors, had a press conference and he made some pronouncements. And then the Liat Pilots Association came out with their version of events, followed by the Flight Attendants Association with their version of events as well. Followed by a situation on Saturday afternoon when all flights were cancelled, no explanation given as usual. And just today, my daughter Mandela, who traveled on the weekend and was supposed to have come back in this morning, sent a message to say that her flight to St. Vincent had been cancelled and hopefully she would be on a flight this afternoon. So Liat continues to be bedeviled with flight problems when they're not late, and the lateness we're accustomed to over the years. It's flights being cancelled. The public is never really informed as to the real reasons. But people's patience has been worn thin over the years. I don't know what the solution is. People say other airlines should come in. Well, other airlines have tried to come in over the years and they have not lasted any time. Some have been funded with practically unlimited funds. You remember Mr. Alan Stanford came in and started an airline and said he was going to run Liat out of the skies. Well, he was run out of the skies and in fact run out of the Caribbean. I understand he's somewhere in prison in the United States of America. We look forward to the eventual opening of the Argyle International Airport, whenever that happens. And from what I understand, the airport is not very far from completion. Recent comments by a local engineer notwithstanding. Whatever the problems at Argyle, that airport will be open sometime. So when it is opened, let us hope that the problems caused by Liat would not disappear. I don't think it's possible for those problems to disappear, but let us hope some of those problems would be solved, whether by CAL of Trinidad and Tobago coming in or some other airlines. But the situation with Liat nowadays is simply untenable. And you cannot really, I mean, on Saturday, there was a lady who was supposed to take a flight from St. Vincent to go to Barbados to catch a flight to England to go on to Holland. Left stranded in St. Vincent and Grenadines by the cancellation. Whether it is because of high winds or whatever the problems, I don't know, but distressing. Let me now speak finally for preliminaries on the United States elections. Tomorrow, the people of the United States, those who have not yet voted, because some have, millions I understand, have already cast their ballot by their system of early voting in many states. The people of the U.S. will be choosing a president to take the place of President Obama, who cannot run again because he has completed 2 terms. And in the American system, a president can only be president for 2 consecutive terms. If he wants to be president again, he has to sit out the next one and perhaps compete next time. But I doubt if he'll want to go through that. The contenders, as we all know, are Mr. Trump and Mrs. Clinton. I have never seen an election campaign in the United States as nasty as this one has been. And Americans can take no credit for what has gone on in their political system. There was a time when Americans used to sneer and snigger at other third world countries, other parts of the world, and say this and that, but the Americans can't say anything about elections anywhere now. It has been a nasty, vicious campaign full of lies, slander. I'm glad it is nearing completion. And it remains to be seen whom the Americans will choose as their next president. I don't want to say much about my own feelings about the candidates, but I will prefer to wait until next week, Monday, Divi, when the results would have been clear. If the results will be clear by next month, because remember the controversy between Mr. Bush and Mr. Gore that ended up in the United States Supreme Court? Well, I hope nothing like that happens this time, but I've had it up to here, well, the so-called campaign in the United States of America. All right, the age of consent. Unusual for me to come back to a topic which I've done so recently and so definitively, but you know, I don't know if it's because of my advancing age. I'm getting a little impatient with the manifestations of sheer maliciousness, in some cases, sheer ignorance, sheer refusal to accept facts. Now, we are all entitled to our opinions, but we are not entitled to our own facts. The facts are there, whether we like them or not. I thought I had clarified the position with regard to the age of consent in St. Vincent and Grenadines when I traced the history and read you the law. But I understand controversy has been going on. Now, these are the facts. In colonial days, the age of consent was 13 years. That is, a child who was under the age of 13, who had not yet reached her 13th birthday, was incapable in law of giving consent to the sexual act. So 13 was regarded as the age of consent, the age below which, even if a girl said yes to a boy or a man, the boy or man could still be convicted of unlawful carnal knowledge, notwithstanding that the girl may have gone to court and say, yes, I said yes to him, and what he did was done with my consent. The law did not regard a person under 13 as capable of giving consent. So such a person who was charged would still be convicted. Then, on the 7th of April, 1966, during the government of the Honorable Ebenezer Theodore Joshua, the Legislative Council, with Mr. O'Neill Barrow as clerk, passed a law amending the Indictable Offences Act, which had 13 as the age of consent. And that law passed in April 1966 by the Joshua government, raised the age of consent from 13 to 15. It was called the Indictable Offense Amendment Ordinance 1966. And what it did was to raise the age of consent from 13 to 15, so that a girl who was not yet 15 cannot, in law, give consent to sexual intercourse. And the man who has sex with a girl between the age of 13 and 15, even with her consent, is liable to imprisonment for 5 years. A man who has sex with a girl under 13 is liable to imprisonment for life. Now that 15-year-old barrier to consent has remained at 15 since April 1966. It hasn't changed. So to say that any government had brought the age of consent to 18 or from 18 to 15, or all the various variations which you might hear on the radio, is to be talking nonsense. No government since 1966, no parliament has interfered with the age of consent. Now, I know that some people feel that 15 is still too young and it should be raised. That is a matter for debate and discussion. But it hasn't happened. It has never happened. It has never been 16 or 17 or 18 or any other age. it has remained 15 years from April 1966 when Joshua raised it from 13. And I hope people will understand that and stop the nonsense of saying that it used to be 18 and this or that government took it down back to 15. That is what the law says. I understand in some other country there is a proposal in their country to raise the age of consent to 18. That is theirs, and what happens in the future remains to be seen. But in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the age of consent is 15. It was never higher than that. It used to be lower, but it was never higher. It has been 15 since 1966. I hope I will say it to beat it into the minds and consciousness of all who would call on the radio and say other than that. So that when you see children coming out of the hospital with babies in their hands, having given birth at the ages of 12 and 13 and 14, you are looking at people against whom criminal offenses have been committed by some man or boy. Now, people would say, how come when these children are going to maternity clinics, a report is not being made? Well, that is because of the rules of medical confidentiality. The medical folks, the nurses, midwives, the doctors, are not permitted to make reports to the police station to say, here is a 13-year-old child who is pregnant and coming to clinic. They're not permitted to say that because there is a rule which says that the confidentiality of patients, insofar as their medical situation is concerned, has to be respected. So we still have in St. Vincent and Grenadines a lot of cases every year where children I understand as early as 11, but more like 12 and 13 and 14 are having babies and nobody is being prosecuted. Maybe the authorities need to devise ways and means of bringing to justice those who impregnate these children. So what I'm saying is, according to the law, a child who is not yet 15 cannot give consent, and even if she says yes, the law is entitled to disregard that and have the person who impregnated her, whether she impregnated or not, who had sex with her, brought to trial. So when we celebrate Universal Children's Day next week, and we talk about stopping the violence against children, this is one aspect of sexual violence which should be addressed. Even if it is not a situation of rape as it is known. The law calls it unlawful carnal knowledge. Wait until they are 15, and if they give consent at 15, then that is a situation within the law. Not that they ought to, but at least the law cannot prosecute a person who has consensual relations with somebody who is already 15. Now, I hope I wouldn't have to return to this topic, and I'll resist returning to it because you can only be talking the same thing over and over for so many times. You get tired. So if people want to be stiff-necked and not accept that the law is what it is, too bad. Okay? All right, well, that is all from this program of The Law and You, program number 844. I look forward to being a further service to you next week, Monday, DV, Deo Volenti, if the Lord is willing. Until then, do have a pleasant week, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, and may the good Lord continue to bless us all.
The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.